All right, man. I'm back here with the Yama. How are you today, Jamie?
I'm good.
You
I'm
smiling
good.
a little
I'm
bit?
excited. I mean, it's a pretty good day. It's a
It
pretty
is.
good day to be covering Notre Dame football. That's for sure.
I don't think uh, when you look at the situation, I don't think either one of us are surprised by how things unfolded as far as Freeman being the guy, right? It has not been announced yet, but of course, everybody anticipates Marcus Freeman will be the next head coach at Notre Dame, former Irish defensive coordinator taking over the head coaching position, which throws a lot of things into kind of flux at this point as to what Notre Dame's going to do. I think we both felt, even from the very get go, that he would be very likely to be the guy hired. I think we felt like Luke Fickle would get a strong look, and so would Matt Campbell. But uh, it seemed the timing of things really had to be rushed. And Jack Swarbrick said, "Hey, I don't want to rush anything. It's important to get the right guy." And I think all those things mattered. But I think in the back of his mind, he knew that things had to be, things had to change, and things had to be finalized quickly. Otherwise, you're going to start losing some guys. As we mentioned, Devin Moore is already decommitted, the cornerback from Florida. So it was imperative to get on the road and start recruiting. But I think the interesting thing is I'm not sure any of us, or really probably anybody in the media, anticipated that the plan would be, let's keep the band together. And you know, I'm going to guess Brian Kelly didn't think that would be the way it was going to unfold either.
No,
And
definitely he didn't think that.
I think he's looking pretty bad right now, not having literally not one of his coaches go to LSU. We're not here to talk and criticize or downgrade Kelly at this point, but that had to be a big blow. I think we should focus more on the future and Marcus Freeman and everything, but that had to be a big blow. And it almost seems like to me, Jack Swarbrick kind of got the last laugh in this one, because I'm sure Kelly thought he could at least get some of these quality coaches, and to end up with any, I think looks pretty bad.
I think it looks really bad, and I know Nick Saban, it was the exact same situation, right? Where the famous story of he sent the plane back to pick up his Michigan State assistants. No one got on the plane. And obviously he did fine. He
He did
hired, I
okay.
think, yeah, yeah, I think he did more than okay.
Yeah.
And it, made some great hires for that staff. Obviously, Jimbo Fisher. That's where the world first heard of Jimbo Fisher, basically,
Yeah.
where he was the offensive coordinator for that LSU program, right? And he made a lot of great hires, a lot of guys that end up. Mel Tucker, right? Another one, right? Obviously, was on that staff, and those weren't guys that came with them, right? So, Brian Kelly, I'm sure he's going to put together a good staff. They're obviously going to keep guys from there, but the fact that none of those guys left, and we don't know that. I think we know that all the guys are coming back for now, right? The staff for now, and I think there's going to be, I think we can say with pretty good certainty that Tommy Reese, McNulty, primarily most of the defensive staff. I think almost all those guys I think are going to stay. We'll see what happens with everybody else, because other jobs will come up and you don't know, but I think it was critical to get these guys to stay, not just for the recruiting purposes, but in fairness to the kids, right? Because Notre Dame players just overcame so much adversity, had so many injuries, did so much, had a great season, phenomenal finish November, the best November that I can recall for a Notre Dame team, where they just dominated November, put themselves right back in the conversation. Where if you would have asked us 6 weeks ago, I think I might have said that Notre Dame has no shot at making the playoff, and
Yeah.
um, they do have a shot, and it's because of what the players did, right, and put themselves in that position. So they really kind of deserved better, than the head coach walking out on them. So, and I think that had to play a role with a lot of these guys staying, because there's a certain amount of loyalty to the kids, right? And yeah, and you're going to make money, and they're going to offer maybe a lot of money to go to LSU. Maybe a couple of those guys will end up going to LSU in the end, but leaving right now was not the right move, I think, for a lot of them. And I think it's great. And Notre Dame has a chance to finish really, really well with this class too.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's possible that some other guys, some of these guys may leave for the staff for LSU or other positions. Like a guy, say, like a Lance Taylor, right? A guy who's wanted an offensive coordinator position for quite some time, but it just hasn't, materialized. So if there was an opportunity for Lance Taylor to suddenly, be in the mix for an offensive coordinator position, I'm sure he would entertain it, depending on where it is and if it's a good gig or whatever. Same thing with a guy like Mike Elston, who's obviously wanted to be a defensive coordinator for a while. So I don't think anything is 100% set in stone, but I think that right now, the way things are, I think it's pretty set in stone, and I think that that's what we're looking at here, is that the vast majority of these guys will be back. And I think Jack Swarbrick did a wonderful job in kind of facilitating this. I'd heard some reports about some people in the media suggesting that this was a situation where Marcus Freeman wasn't going to get the job if he wouldn't agree to have Tommy Rees be his offensive coordinator, and Tommy had to agree for this to go down. I'm not buying that, dude. I'm not buying that at all. I mean, you don't offer somebody a job and then say, oh, by the way, in order to have this job, you have to keep this guy and he has to say yes for you to have this job. I don't buy that. So, I know that that's, some people have been saying that. I don't think that that's accurate. I'm sure what happened. I'm not saying that there wasn't a conversation. Of course there was a conversation. I'm sure Swarbrick said, look, this is a good thing. If you can get Tommy to come back, the continuity and keeping everything, that would be really, really ideal. And I'm sure, when he was having conversations with Marcus probably said, yeah, that's a good thing. Let's see if we can get it done. But to suggest that this only happened because Rees said he was going to come, I think that's kind of a disservice to Marcus Freeman. And it just is
Total
what
disservice.
I really think that is a really big disservice to him and what he's accomplished. And to be honest with you, you shouldn't want to start a relationship that way. You know what I mean? We're all trying to do this together. So, it is what it is. And people have made comments and things like that. And it's important, I think, for these guys to have a smooth sailing. You know what I mean? Obviously, I'm sure Tommy Rees would have loved to have been the head coach at Notre Dame. And maybe someday he is, maybe someday. But as of now, he's the offensive coordinator, and they're just going to have to work together, and I'm sure they will, and everything will be good. But I think it's just important that things start out really smoothly, and I just didn't like hearing or reading about that, and that it's kind of circulating that that's kind of the idea of something. Your thoughts on that, Jimmy?
Well, I'm in agreement with you, and I think that Marcus Freeman isn't going to take the job as much as he wants to be the head coach of Notre Dame if he can't put his stamp on the program. If there's all these caveats that he has to take care of to do it, it just and like you said, I'm not saying there wasn't some kind of influence there or suggestions that this
I'm sure it was. Absolutely.
I'm positive that was heavily, there was a lot of that, but I don't think it was anything where, well, if this doesn't happen, whatever, we're
moving on to something different.
I mean, I don't think if that's the move, then I don't think that, frankly, I think that's just not the right, like you said, it's not the right foot to get started on. Right. And I just don't think that would have been good
I wouldn't have accepted it if I were Marcus Freeman and they told me that. You know what I mean? I just wouldn't. Now, I will say
you'd have to want it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And I think that he did. You know what I mean? I think he did. I think he values and respects Tommy Rees enough that, when they went to him, they said, he's like, yeah, man, I think he's doing a great job. Let's try and put this together because I can be successful. Our program can be successful if we have good people. And we're really successful already right now. Yeah. So let's try and keep all the good people we can. And They did, and I think that Swarbrick did a great job. I think that a lot of the coaches at Notre Dame, stayed loyal to Notre Dame because I think what it says, as I mentioned, it says so much about how much people love to be at Notre Dame and coach at Notre Dame, and more importantly, probably coach the types of players that Notre Dame attracts. And I think that that's really an important factor in this. So when you look at it, the guys that we've heard that are coming back are Tommy Rees, John McNulty, Lance Taylor on offense. I think that those are pretty solid. We know Mike Mickens will be back, Chris O'Leary will be back, and of course Marcus Freeman will be back, and Mike Elston will be back. So that leaves some guys kind of in some flux. We don't know what's going to happen to Brian Polian for sure. We don't know what's going to happen to Jeff Quinn, and we don't know what's going to happen with Del Alexander. But when you think about it, Jamie, I think these are kind of the core guys of parts of offense and defense where things are really functioning well. Your thoughts?
Yeah. And, well, I mean, we should say that Matt reported on the site that, that he has heard that Quinn will be back. Does that mean he's going to be back for the long term? We don't have that clarity.
Yeah.
Right. And it's our understanding that, I mean, Del Alexander, like, we don't want to put it out there that these guys are gone, because
no, definitely not. Yeah.
That's not what we have heard or anything. It's just that we don't know their status in terms of if they're going to be on the staff long term. Right. That's the main thing. And but I think if you look at it, like you said, those are like core individuals. Like they're the ones that we know for sure are coming back and have like been public about announcing that they're going to be around. Like, those are core guys to, if you want to sustain what you have in recruiting, sustain the success you've had on the field, the culture, all of that. Matt Balis, obviously, right? Like, we didn't mention him, but Matt Balis, 100%.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, I'm
like
sorry. I was remiss. Yeah. That was a huge part of it.
That's a critical, he's a critical one. Right.
Yeah.
So, and that was, I mean, really when Matt Balis said, I'm going to be back, I want to die here or whatever. Right. Like, when he came out and said that, that's when it was obvious. Oh,
what was
they're
going
to try
on?
to hire.
Yeah.
Marcus Freeman is their guy. They just got to figure it out. Like, because if, like we've said before, the new guy was always going to bring in a new strength and conditioning coach, right? And you know what? Maybe if circumstances were different and Cincinnati didn't have a shot at the playoff, and there was all these other things there, and Luke Fickell could have made that transition without like walking away from a team that has a chance to win a national championship, then maybe that would have been different with that. But I think under this circumstances, this was the right move, and having that and keeping the continuity of what was built and what has been good for Notre Dame, I think that's important, and I think it's very important.
Yeah. Before we get going any further, I wanted to mention once again, there's a lot going on with Notre Dame football. So if you're not a member of IrishSportsDaily.com, it's a great time to sign up. You can go to the front page there. There's a premium section. You can sign up for a subscription to Irish Sports Daily. You can sign up for even a week for $1 just to kind of check out and see what's going on. There'll be lots of stuff breaking as far as coaches go, as far as recruiting goes, who's going to stick, who's going to sign, signing day coming up. And then, of course, we got all the NFL stuff coming up, who's going to go to the NFL, who's coming back. We have the transfer portal. We have all kinds of crazy stuff that's going to happen. Plus, spring football is going to be a whole lot more fun than it has been in the past. So this will be fun to watch. I wanted to get back to, or before I forget, also, if you're not a subscriber to our YouTube channel, down there at the bottom, there's a subscribe button. Click on that, and also click on that bell as well, and that'll alert you to every time we go live on YouTube Live. If you're on YouTube, it'll let you know that, hey, we're out here live right now. So, but as you mentioned, the guys, we don't know what's going to happen with Del Alexander, Quinn, Polian. I think that if you follow kind of the path of things, the guys that we know are coming back are the guys who announced something, or we were able to confirm. We just haven't been able to confirm those others at this point. So that's why I think they're a little bit more up in the air at this point. I had some customers ask me, why is it that Reese is done before Freeman, as far as they can come out and say something. Well, Tommy Reese's contract's pretty much already hammered out. It's just a matter of let's add a couple years and throw some more money on it, right?
Yeah.
That's only there isn't a whole lot more that you have to add to a contract with that. If you're Marcus Freeman, I mean, there's all kinds of things. I think when the stories come out about what happened with Kelly and all this type of stuff, you'll find that there's all kinds of things that are involved in these contracts, like buildings and facility
Bonuses.
upgrades, and if things aren't met by X amount of date, then there's penalties and all kinds of stuff. And so there's how much do I have for my assistant coach pool? The way this works is a head coach gets a certain amount of money for his assistant coaches, and then he's allowed to divide it up amongst the assistant coaches any way he wants to, and so you have to negotiate all that. And then you have are you going to pay off my house? Or are you going to give me a new car? All this kind of stuff has to go into it, and with
Radio
the head coach,
show deal, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So all this stuff needs to be ironed out, and then if Marcus Freeman left as a defensive coordinator, it's one thing. If you leave as a head coach, it's something else, and there's a buyout, and that's got to be negotiated.
Father Jenkins also away right now.
Yeah. So there's a lot of things that are taking time to get all this stuff finalized. So I think that's it. Jamie, I wrote down a few things that I wanted to kind of hit before we get into questions, and the first thing I wanted to talk about is, how do you think recruiting is going to change under Marcus Freeman? Not just from an effort type of thing, but I mean, how do you think things are going to change?
I think it's all going to be about being more aggressive, really. And we've seen them be more aggressive since Marcus Freeman has come along. And I think in general, even before Marcus Freeman, they were starting to become more aggressive. But I think you're going to see more aggressive with early offers. I think that is going to be even more so than what we've seen. Because they want to identify those top guys and they want to develop those relationships with them and do that. And look at how it's kind of paid off with some of the 2023 kids, right? So I think that's going to be a big part of it. I can tell you right now, Marcus Freeman as the head coach is, and Brian Kelly stepped it up a little bit in recent years in terms of his recruiting and being more involved, but he was selective. I don't think Marcus Freeman is going to be nearly as selective. I think he's going to be involved in as many as possible, right? Yeah. Like that he can get involved in, right? And when it comes to some guys who's like, an Xavier Nwankpa, for example, like he'll run point on those kind of ones. Like he'll be the guy who's doing it, much like you saw with like Urban Meyer would do that. When, it's funny when you say, like, I was reading a thing about Elias Ricks when he was transferring from LSU and he was talking about Ohio State and he was like, Urban Meyer was my main recruiter. Mm-hmm. Urban Meyer, the head coach, was his main recruiter because he was a 5-star cornerback. And I think you're going to see that with some of the guys now. You're going to see Marcus Freeman is the guy I talk to the most from that. And that's just what it is because he understands the importance of it and how critical it is. So I just think you're just going to see overall him more involved. I imagine that, he will fight for it. And that's just probably one of the things with the contract too. Yeah. He's going to want more recruiting staffers. He's going to want more bodies in. I think that's huge, right? Yep. It's like he already came in and brought in Chad Bowden, to be the defensive recruiting coordinator. They got a guy on the offense, Trey Brown. Like it's going more guys. They're going to want more manpower because that helps you with everything, evaluations, background checks, all this kind of stuff. They want to be able to do that and take advantage, and they want to be able to research all of these guys and get in on it and get in on guys quick and get more guys to campus and be more involved in that sense. And I think that is going to be just ramped up and the way it should have been really for a while.
Yeah. I think you're going to see probably a few more analysts. I think, as you mentioned, the staff will expand in the recruiting department. As you mentioned, I think you're absolutely right that Marcus Freeman's going to take point on a lot more things and work towards I'm the guy. I think that that's very true. I also think that and when you come into a new situation like he did, I'm sure he's taking stock. Like I would be taking stock as I'm doing it, because if I'm trying to get a head job someday, I'm trying to look around as okay. Well, I was at Ohio State, I was at Purdue, I was at Cincinnati. I've been around, right? And what was working here, what was working there, what was working in all these other places, and now I'm here at Notre Dame, and they're not doing this, even though this was very successful for us, right? So I think you'll see lots of upgrades, but it's going to take time. They're not going to hire 20 people right out of the gate. It's going to be, okay, what's the most important? Let's prioritize that. And then let's, level 2 of guys that we need, or people, I shouldn't say not all guys. Of course, women would be involved. But, we need X amount of these and this type of thing. And I'm sure it's all been prioritized. And again, people are asking, I see some people kind of mentioning it in the chat, who negotiates that? Well, I'm sure an agent will sit down with Marcus Freeman and they will go through a list of, here's what I would like. All right. Here's what I would like. And these are the most important. These are the second tier most important. These are the third most important. And all that is getting negotiated, through this whole thing. And it's not something that you can just hammer out in an hour. This is going to take some time to get through all this. And some guys are very strict and stern negotiators, and some people aren't. Just in my own experience, when I went to Irish Eyes and Scout.com the first time, that contract, swear to God, took me over a year to negotiate before I went, because basically one end was trying to bend the other end over. And I was going to be the receiver in that, and I was not going to allow that.
So you weren't interested in being the receiver.
Yeah. It took forever for that to happen. When I negotiated my contract with F5 and Brandon Jones here at F5, I kid you not, it took an hour, literally an hour. And the reason why is because Brandon's been in this business. He knows what's important. He knows what's important to people like me. And so he knew I'd be asking for this and this and this. And he also realized that, hey, if you're going to have an agreement, if one guy feels like he's getting screwed the whole time, that guy's never going to be happy, and you're never going to accomplish anything. And Brandon understands that. So in an hour, literally an hour, we had all the terms agreed upon, and boom, it was just done. So, I don't know with Swarbrick. I think it's a kind of a touchy situation, because you got a brand new head coach, right, who's never coached before. So, he's not going to want to give Marcus Freeman $10 million. He's going to want to give him a lot less money and say, look, Marcus, I could give you $10 million, but I can't give you any money for your assistants. If you want to be, if you want to be successful, you need to give the money to them. And as the program continues to progress, you'll make more money. So again, these are all things that need to be negotiated. And when it comes to how recruiting will change, that's part of it. That he's going to be looking at that. And I think Jack Swarbrick was really accommodating when Marcus Freeman came in, because he basically said, I want Chad Bowden, bring him in here. I need him. And boom, he got him. And then they immediately saw results and said, well, you know what? Maybe we ought to get somebody on the offensive side too. Boom, they got it. And the guy's doing a great job there too. So I think you'll see more of that happen. Now, another topic I wanted to ask you about, and it's kind of recruiting oriented, is, we have a certain style of player, and everybody kind of knows what Notre Dame was looking for under Clark Lee. What do you think changes now that Marcus has been here for a year in the types of players he's going to be looking for based on what he has now? Do you see any major changes that he's going to be looking for?
I think, just a lot of it based on what you see with especially the 2023 DBs that they're after. I think they're looking for, similar type of, like, everyone wants long corners who can run. Everyone wants that. Everyone does it, right? But he's wants those guys that can step in and have that physical ability and play early, right? Like, he's looking for those elite guys who can, fit in here and match up, because he knows that's what he's got to do. That's knows if he wants to run the defense he wants to run, that's who he has to get. That's why Cincinnati's defense is so good. It's because their corners are that good. And then every other part, builds off of that. Right. So I think that's the main thing, is that, he's looking for, I would say, prioritize why it's personnel wise, that's number one, I think. And then from there, I just think they're taking, if this guy, they're wary of numbers and what they can take. And, he's aware of that. But I think, he's going to be aggressive in the fact that if they can get a stud D end, and this is a guy who can kind of put them over the top, where, they don't want to ruffle any feathers in terms of, like, they said they're only going to take this number and that number, but they're going to try to get the best guys possible and then fit whatever they got to do in terms of, how that fits in the numbers, and then how that also fits in the scheme. Mm-hmm. And I think that's going to be the main thing, right? Where you're going to see, you're like, wow, like Notre Dame took, where before we'd see Notre Dame took 4 linebackers. Well, maybe they're only going to take 1 in the next year. And it's like, I don't think that's exactly how it's going to be, because I think, they're going to kind of play it by, well, we got these 2 guys that are top 100 kids that we want, and they both really want to come here. Then they'll take them, like they'll take them, and then they'll just kind of deal with it after, and then deal with how it all works out after that.
Yeah. I think the other thing we're going to see in recruiting, and it's based off of some stuff I've heard. Jamie, do you remember I think it was Oklahoma? They had the big thing where they had one of their big recruiting weekends in the summer, and they had all the
cars,
the Lamborghinis and Ferraris and stuff, and everybody was kind of making fun of it, going, man, if you have to do that. And, we've heard his comment was, why not? Why wouldn't you do that? Right? That's what these kids are interested in. Let's tell them, hey, let's get them here. I think what you're going to see is more creativity in how they try and sell the image and what they're going to do. I think they're going to be much more aggressive in that. I'm hoping, for a long time. I mean, again, I think it's tough for when you look at numbers, right, for a game, and you see Ohio State has 200 guys in. Well, that's hard to communicate with 200 guys. And let's be honest, out of those 200 guys, maybe 75 are actual guys that they may recruit. 200 show up, maybe 75 tops are guys that are actually going to recruit. And out of those 75, how many of those guys could get into Notre Dame? That's a different story. So I don't think you'll never see the numbers, right? You'll never see the numbers as far as we want 300 people here at the game this weekend, because we want to see their atmosphere. But what I think you'll see is more about the quality of things. And there are, this is the honest to God truth. Urban Meyer would go and say, okay, this is your region, right? And we're having this big event, and I don't want to hear from you until you tell me X guy's coming, and that's your job to get him here. And I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to hear why you can't get him here. He's just got to be here. And that's just the way he was. Now, I do think you can wear out some assistants that way, but it's that expectation. You set that expectation, and so I think we'll see more of that because he's been around that, and he knows what all that is about. And so I think we'll see that moving forward. The other topic I wanted to ask you about, now Reese is out, right? He's back and out from under the Brian Kelly umbrella. Do you think we'll see anything change offensively with what Tommy Reese wants to do? Because I've said for a long time, I think Tommy Reese, calls the plays. I know he does. I think Kelly sometimes will add some thoughts in there, but Tommy Reese calls the plays and he sets up the game plan and the offense. But I think he sets it up under the umbrella of what
Brian Kelly wants.
Well, yeah, and his philosophy of how to run offense. Do you think it'll change?
I think it'll change, maybe not drastically. I just imagine that there's things that he wanted to do that, maybe Brian Kelly, I don't want to say he vetoed it, but, I want to say that Brian Kelly probably pointed him in a certain direction, right? Because that's, I mean, he's the head coach. That's his right. Like he wants, this is what he wants out of this game, and this is what he wants. Like, obviously, and the one thing you say about Brian Kelly, and he kind of gets a bad rap sometimes. The guy was a really good X's and O's coach.
He
He's a
was,
really
yeah.
good X's coach, and so I think he, but he had a lot of influence of how they were going to attack certain ways, and I think you're going to see. I don't want to say a more modern way because I think Kelly adapted certainly, but I also think Tommy Rees is going to be open to more things that um not more modern, but just evolving the offense in a way that you're going to see it and you're going to notice like, oh, they're doing way more of this than before. And I couldn't tell you specifically what it's going to be, but I think we already see a little bit of it. Like even just in that Stanford game, they just did a great job with more misdirection in that game. And I just think you're just going to see him kind of using the ideas and more scheme that he's seeing of what's going on right now in college football and kind of building off of that rather than, this is a base things and this is what we're going to do.
Yeah, I don't know if you've ever, I've been in jobs before where I didn't necessarily agree with the way things were done, and uh, and but I did it the way the person wanted me to do it. But you always kind of, even when you were alone, you always kind of felt like this person was always looking over your shoulder, and so you're sitting there, you're drawing up a game plan. You're like, yeah, I just know he's not going to like that, so I'm just going to take that out. You know what I mean? And I think that that's where the things are going to be different. So some of the things that I think maybe Tommy wanted to do, but he knew Brian Kelly wasn't going to be happy or didn't want to try that or whatever, that was never an option. Those kind of things will be put back in, and I think that that's what you'll see. As you mentioned, the misdirection, I think that that's very, very key. What'll be interesting to see is if there's a new offensive line coach, if, who's the running game coordinator, how do they change that? That I think will be an interesting thing. I think that O-line coach is hugely important, whoever they hire. Whether it's Jeff Quinn or somebody else, whoever that person is, it's going to be really, really critical to the success of Notre Dame football and to Marcus Freeman and his program. And I gotta believe he knows that. We watched the first 6 games, what a bad O-line can do, and what a guy struggling coaching wise, how that impacts the rest of the positions on offense. And so I think that they're going to pay special attention to that. The next topic I wanted to talk about is, do you think this hire will change the perception of how people look at Notre Dame, especially recruits and things like that, but also just people as well? In that, a lot of people think, I think a lot of people have this image of Notre Dame as it's real churchy, it's real, solemn, it's real boring, it's real, white, it's real, they're never going to do anything cool or fun or exciting there. That's just not the way Notre Dame is. Do you think this changes that perception? And of course, you now have a head coach who will go out there and probably change some minds as well. But I think that this hire will change a lot of people's perception. Your thought?
I think so too. And I just think because of like what you said with like the Oklahoma example and how Marcus Freeman said he would embrace that if that's what he thought was what recruits wanted. Right.
Yeah.
So I think, and it can only change and get updated because they're going from a 60-year-old coach to a 35-year-old coach. Let alone that it's a white guy and an African-American guy, but and then now because of also the 60-year-old coach is gone, who's, obviously he coached Tommy Rees. And as much as Tommy Rees had authority as an offensive coordinator, I mean, it's different when this is the guy who coached you and now you're coaching under him and whatever, but there's still that little bit of that dynamic. And it's a lot less of that dynamic, right? And you got a 29-year-old offensive coordinator. The staff is young. Like the staff is pretty young, right? Like Mike Mickens is young. Chris O'Leary's young, right? Lance Taylor's pretty young. Like,
Yeah.
in general, like, Elston and McNulty are like the only like
Yeah.
old guys on the staff. And I mean, they're not even that old, but like, I'm just saying, like, they're probably going to hire, and that's just kind of the way it is, because the other thing is recruiting is a young man's game for the most part. Yeah, there's some guys who are older who do a great job with it, but it's a lot of work to do it. And you have to, you're doing a lot of things that you didn't do before. So if you recruited 20 years ago, that's a lot different. And that was always one of the things with Kelly, is because you always mentioned, Mike, that, he made that transition from, Central Michigan, Cincinnati to Notre Dame. And it's just a completely different calendar. And then think about how the calendar even just changed since he's been at Notre Dame. That's a lot of extra. So he probably didn't think he had to do all that extra work. Well, Marcus Freeman knows he has to do all that work. The staff knows they have. Tommy Rees knows he has to do all that. That's part of the job. That's one of the things you sign up for when you do it. So, I think the perception of Notre Dame is going to change, because those guys are going to change it based on, how they approach things. And it's just, of course, it's going to be different, because you have somebody who's 60 years old, there for 12 years. And now you got new blood into, the power positions, and it's going to change drastically, I think.
And I think you'll see, Tommy Rees's personality come out a little bit. He's always so reserved, but I think if you kind of know him a little bit more, he's kind of a jokester. I mean, he's more of a loose guy than he comes across in interviews and stuff like that. And I think you'll see that a little bit more. And also, I think he'll probably feel more comfortable to be that guy. You know what I mean? Not always looking over his shoulder and that type of thing. And so I think that's going to be fun to watch, is his, I guess, blossoming as an offensive coordinator, and his personality and what he wants to put out there. So I'm excited. The other thing that I think people probably don't realize is, for a long time, people have been saying that Notre Dame's cheap when it comes to assistant coaches. And I think for a very long time that was true. But I've heard the number that Rees got paid. I've shared that with you guys. That's a big number, dude. That's a big number. Yeah. And that to me is as exciting as anything, because, you pay a 29-year-old kid, not kid, a man, I should say. You pay he's a kid to me because I'm older than dirt. But when you pay a young guy like that kind of money, to me, that says that, hey, we're here to win. We know we're really close. And we're not going to let, couple 100,000, 400,000, whatever it is, get between us and success. and for so long, that was not the case. And so that, I think, is very, very exciting about what's going to happen here moving forward. The other topic I wanted to discuss is we still got a game. We still got a game to play, whether it's a New Year's Six Bowl or a playoff game. They certainly have another game. And the more I think about it, I think whoever they're going to play, they're going to really put the hammer down too. Brian Kelly essentially told them, "You're not good enough. I don't believe in you guys. I don't think you're good enough to win the national championship. Even though I've been telling you this all along.
Yeah.
I don't believe you're good enough to win a national championship." That would really sit and stir me. I'd want to show everybody that, one, I believe in my new coach. He believes in us, and we deserve to either be in the playoff, or we deserve to be in this playoff, and we're going to show you by pounding on this New Year's Six team that we should have been in the playoffs. I think we're going to see the best game Notre Dame has played. Your thoughts? This year,
I think so. Certainly the most fired up. I imagine they'll be. I think the only thing that you would have to worry about is if they're too fired up and they're just, you don't want them to kind of, like blow it out in the first quarter, and all of a sudden it's like it's just too much adrenaline. They're all going for big hits. They're playing undisciplined because they're just flying around, right? Like, it's got to be like, controlled violence. I mean, that's what the game of football is all about, anyways. But I think, especially if, yeah, especially if they get in the playoff too. Like Notre Dame, and now all of a sudden becomes the team you don't want them to get. The other teams don't want them to get in, and I mean, we don't know for sure, but we assume Kyle Hamilton is going to play if they play in the playoff,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so all of a sudden their defense has been playing lights out,
yeah.
and they're getting their All-American safety back, right? They're a dangerous team. They're a dangerous team. So, and they're gonna want to prove, like you said, Brian Kelly wrong, and they want to play and show and prove that Marcus Freeman was the right choice and keeping Tommy Rees. They want to do all of that, right? So, I do think, yeah, they're going to be a very, very dangerous team. And even if they're in a New Year's Six bowl, I mean, normally I would say, oh man, look at what the matchup going to be. I don't care who they play. I think they're going to go up. I would be very surprised if they don't win that game.
Yeah. One thing I did want to ask you, I always kind of put all this stuff together as far as our topics and what we want to talk about. Because you're always busy doing stuff, and this is kind of my role and what I do. Is there anything you wanted to mention? Anything that you wanted to talk about when it comes to this hire, this team, recruiting, anything that, kind of are your own thoughts?
Well, I mean, I really think that this could have went really bad if they didn't handle it fast, because even if they came to this decision and say this was, like late next week, I think it could have actually gone bad, because you look at what happened at Oklahoma, and obviously that's a different situation too, where they're not getting ready to play in a playoff game, or have a chance at a playoff game, and
yeah, they can be more patient.
And
yeah.
they had staff people get out, but look at of like the elite blue chip guys they've lost from the roster, and the guys who are supposed to go there. Like, I think they have 7 decommits, and they got 3 more guys that were like top 100 recruits that are young guys on the team who've already bounced out. And that's not even including Spencer Rattler, who was already going to bounce, right? So I think this could have been real chaos. And I mean, obviously you want to hire the right guy, and, that's important. And maybe if the circumstances are different, Luke Fickell would have been the guy. Maybe, right? We don't know that, but maybe, right? He certainly would have it would have been more serious discussion, I believe, right? But that wasn't the case. And I think Notre Dame had to act fast. And as long as they, Jack Swarbrick and the administrator, as long as they believe that Marcus Freeman is the guy, and then a lot of the staff is the guy. And obviously the way Jack Swarbrick talked about the staff, he was pretty confident in the staff. So I think they really I was worried actually when I listened to that Jack Swarbrick press conference. And yeah. I thought,
this is going to go a lot longer than it needs to.
Yes. And I thought this was going to go bad, and they were going to lose, they were going to lose some key guys that were going to help them. Because I think this program is actually closer now than at any time under the Brian Kelly era, because they have these influx of these guys coming in. But if they lose, even if they lost 2 or 3 of those top guys, I think it could have been crushing, right? Yeah. And then all of a sudden that resets it back a year and whatnot, right? So, and I really think it was critical to do that and land it. And I got to tip my cap to Jack Swarbrick, because it didn't sound like it was going to go this way, and I think he really, really handled it well.
All right, folks, we're going to get into your questions here. We already got a bunch. Before we do, I wanted to mention once again, if you're not a member of irishsportsdaily.com, go to the front page, click on the premium section. You can sign up for a premium subscription. There'll be all kinds of things happening here. Crazy stuff, I'm sure. I have a feeling we'll see some fireworks even with recruiting in this class when it's all said and done. It may not be in the initial signing period, but it could be later, where there's a guy or two that pop up. This is, I would be shocked if we didn't see something. So go to front page Irish Sports Daily, sign up, and also make sure you subscribe here on YouTube. Just click the subscribe button. If you want to ask us questions, feel free. We're not charging you or anything for these questions. We're going to just answer them, and so feel free to ask us any question. The one thing we do ask is when you ask a question, please put either question or a question mark in front of it so we know that that's a question you'd like us to answer. And we're going to get going right here. Oh, boy. Here's a good question. If Kelly had stayed, do you think Marcus Freeman would have been hired as a head coach at another school? Good question. What do you think, Jamie?
I think he probably would have. I think, I think he probably would have had, at least conversations with maybe that Virginia Tech job. I think Duke, they wanted a guy like him. Not to say that they were going to hire him or that was set in stone, but they wanted someone like him. And I think, Virginia just opened up. Like, that's something that, that could have been a job for him, right? Like, and it's not a head coaching job, but Ohio State, they were going to go hard after him, I think, as a defensive coordinator. Like, we had heard that, and that was, I'm positive that was in the works if this didn't happen. So, I think, there's a very good chance that he was not going to be at Notre Dame. And frankly, I just knowing it, I was sweating it because I really wanted to keep him.
Yeah, no doubt. When will there be a press conference to announce Freeman? I anticipated tomorrow. We talked about it. Father Jenkins is in Rome right now. I think that's kind of the holdup. Is he's not there, and you don't have a press conference without the president. So, especially of something of this substance. So, I would guess it'll be tomorrow. They're going to want that coach announced so he can get on all the media blitz that they can get, everything they can get, all the, and I'm sure it's already being organized right now. He'll be on, all the various talk shows, and then I'm sure they'll also try and get him on all the championship games, all the broadcasts for that. I'm sure they're going to be trying to angle that. I'm sure Brian Kelly will be trying to angle his way into that stuff too. But I'm pretty sure that that's what they're going to be doing. Anything you want to add, Jamie?
No, I think I think they're going to try to get that done as quick as possible. Maybe if, Father Jenkins isn't back, then they do it to early next week, but I wouldn't expect it to go further than early next week. And the main thing is, the most important thing is, it's the news is out there, and it might not be official, but it's out there in the ears of recruits, which is most important.
All right, we got a good buddy or a question here from a good buddy Gary in Dallas. Can Freeman make an in-home visit now as an assistant and another after being named head coach? That's a damn good question, and I wish I had the answer to. Gary, I'm not going to lie. I honestly don't know. I just don't know. We know that a head coach can only visit once. And, I can't imagine that Marcus Freeman's visited a lot of guys already. And now that he becomes head coach, of course he's going to be able to have a chance to visit these people. So I would guess yes. I even though he hasn't been officially announced and named, I think that he can get in there and talk to some people and then probably go back. I would guess. I don't know. I wish I knew the answer to that.
I have a feeling that until it's named, he's allowed to do as much as any assistant, because I just don't see how they could police that really, because he's still technically an assistant. So, and I have a feeling they'll take advantage of every loophole they can get until that happens.
Yeah. I just put up a question. I'm sorry, folks, if you would, please don't curse in the chat. I understand, especially if you're asking us a question, because YouTube is very, very particular about this, and they could shut our channel down if we continue to do stuff like that. So just so everybody knows, if you want to ask us a question, please make it PC. All right. Question. A lot of people seem to be asking for a quarterback from the transfer portal. They do not believe Buckner can pass. Would like your take on Buckner. Do you think he should be the starter next year? I think it's too early. It's too early. I just saw a question down the road where they were talking about, now all of a sudden you've got the Virginia quarterback who's out there, And do you take a flyer on that guy? And Brendan Armstrong's a pretty darn good player, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people coming after him. But I'll tell you what, if you can get 4 offensive linemen back, and you've got some pretty good receivers, and you've got a heck of a running game, and one of the best tight end in the country, it's going to be attractive, just like it was to Jack Cohn, who was probably the best, I guess, potential transfer to come out that you had a chance to get this year. So I would guess that they will certainly look at it. But I think people are reading way too much into this Buckner situation. He has a very limited package to what they can do, and they just don't give him the opportunity to be successful in the type of offense that he needs to run to be successful. The stuff they have him doing is a change of pace type of thing. It's not, let's let him run the whole offense. And so I think people are being a little bit overly critical on his ability to pass because of the way things have been set up. Thoughts, Jamie?
Yeah, I think it's way too premature to criticize him as a passer. Like you said, the package, what they're using and kind of expanding on it. I think what you saw from the Virginia Tech game, when you saw them go like 2 minute, you kind of saw the good of what he can do. And I don't even think they really saw any of like the really spectacular kind of stuff that he did. He had the one, the RPO rollout that he threw to Lindsey that was, a really nice touch ball and then ended up being a PI. But I mean, he has made some throws in practice, and he obviously made some throws in high school that are like Aaron Rodgers, like ridiculous, off platform, like that. I think more people are going to see that and kind of be wowed by. So, I mean, there's the best is yet to come for him too. But I mean, in terms of a transfer, I think you'd be negligent to not even look at it.
Yeah.
You'd have to.
Yeah. This question, anything on Amber Selking? Doesn't sound like the type of role that changes schools as frequently as an assistant coach. She's kind of the health and wellness person. I don't know. I mean, my guess is I'm sure Brian Kelly would try and entice her to come down there. I'm sure there's plenty of people that do that job. My guess is it's probably way down on the list for Marcus Freeman at this point. It's certainly something he's going to address and look at. But if I think it's a situation that if they are presented with she may leave, then that's probably something they're going to have to address. But that's probably something that they would address later down the road. The most important is let's get our staff in place. Let's finish this recruiting class, and then we'll look at administrative positions and things like that. This guy wants to know there's still no super chat. First of all, I appreciate you asking. YouTube is just the weirdest thing. You have to like submit all this stuff. I've submitted it. They say there's something wrong with my name, my legal name versus something I submitted. And the problem with YouTube is there is literally nobody to talk to. There's not even an email you can send. So I don't know. But I do appreciate you asking. They suspended it. We had it for a bit. But when they tried to deposit money into my account, they were saying, this doesn't match up with this, and so we can't do anything about it. And I don't know. It's a problem I'm going to have to fix when all this crap is over. So it's the least of my worries. But I do appreciate, you wanting to donate to the Kai Ueyama College Fund. And
I appreciate it.
Yeah, I know, Chris. I know that you do.
Keep them coming when it's open up again, guys.
Exactly. All right. Question here. Well, okay, maybe. What's going on with Dell? Saw something about tight end coach at USC. I don't know, man. It's one of those things that I'm not sure that he's a guy that's really talking to a lot of people right now. I'm sure he's probably looking at the situation with the wide receivers and all this type of stuff and saying, hey, if I didn't get a call by now, maybe I need to look into some options. And
he's still recruiting for ND right
and he's
now.
still doing his job. Yeah.
Yeah. He's still doing his job. And from everything we've heard, he's really like, especially the commits, they like him. They like him, and the parents like him. And I think, people have a view of Dell. And I think that's not the view that a lot of the recruits feel about him, so I think he's doing his job right now too. So that, we shouldn't put it past him. There's not a situation where he's like back channeling, doing it for USC right now. That's not the situation at all.
Yeah. This was something we just addressed early. The question was, read somewhere that Swarbrick requirement to hire Freeman was that Reese needs to stay. Was that a requirement of Freeman, or was that a requirement or Freeman's? I really, we discussed that. I don't think that there's any, maybe it possibly worked out, but I just couldn't imagine, Marcus Freeman agreeing to that. I wouldn't if I were going to be the head coach. I don't think that many head coaches would agree with that. You don't go take a head coaching job and then they say, oh, by the way, you got to take this guy, and this guy. Just like we were saying when Bayless was the strength and conditioning coach, we knew for a fact that, no head coach is going to want to be forced to have a guy, even a guy with the reputation of Matt Bayless. They're not going to force you to do that. And a lot of head coaches won't do that. It was interesting because I made that comment, and I had a guy contact me who knew Fickle's strength and conditioning coach and said, there's no way Fickle would come to Notre Dame without his strength and conditioning coach. They're that tight and together. So this is the kind of thing that happens all the time. So I would be shocked if that was the way it happened. Excuse me. Question, did Notre Dame ever offer Arch Manning? Yeah, of course they did. Yeah. It's just not quite the situation that he's looking for right now. Maybe something changed. Let's see. There's a lot of questions. It takes me a while to sift through this. So, Yama, do you have anything you want to add while I'm sifting through this?
Oh, just that, like, a guy like Arch Manning, I mean, obviously they're going to go after him, but he never even gave Notre Dame a look, right? Like, and he's been on multiple visits. I believe, I would be shocked if he ended up outside of the SEC.
Yeah. Interesting. Did you see that text from Christian?
I saw, yeah.
That was interesting. I don't know whether that's true or not, but Christian just sent us a text.
That's what, yeah. So I guess we should say that, a Notre Dame commit had told Christian, at least, that they were allowed to take another official visit because of a new head coach. And I don't know for sure that's the rule, but if that is the case,
well, because we had heard that they were trying to get a bunch of guys on campus, all at the same time, all the commits to kind of regroup everybody. But, Christian said he spoke to a commit, and the commit said that they get to take in another official visit. So interesting. That would be really, and
obviously that would be big for a lot of guys, right?
Yeah, just to get them back. If you could get Devin Moore back on campus, any of those guys. Next question. Any truth to the rumor that Frieden stood up to Kelly at the players' meeting? We've kind of discussed this. I mean, was it 2 minutes? He was only there for 2 minutes. Yeah. So, and we have recording of the actual speech and everything, and then he left. And so I'd be surprised. My understanding is I think that there was probably some conversation outside of the meeting where, I'm sure that, Marcus Freeman was pretty upset too, because let's be honest, when you're Brian Kelly, right, and you're recruiting a guy like Marcus Freeman, who's a hot young coach, right, and you say, one of the things you're going to say to him is, we're going to give you a 3-year contract. I know you're a hot coach. I don't want to hire you unless you can guarantee me you're going to be here 2 years, right? I mean, that's what every head coach is going to say to a young, hot coach like that. And they're going to look him in the eye and they're going to say, look, I'm trusting you. I'm giving you this job. I don't have to give it to you. I can give it to anybody else. But I'm trusting you based off of your word that you're going to stick here, right? and then the head coach leaves the next year.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I could understand, if Marcus Freeman was upset about that, because he just moved his family.
Yeah.
And that's a frustrating thing. That's the business. That's the way it works out. But and then kind of the way the team found out, and kind of the way everybody these guys found out, even the coaches. But we discussed it before. That's just the way Kelly operates. He's always operated that way. I've had numerous former coaches and a couple on the staff tell me that, hey, when he gets a new job, he just doesn't talk to anybody. He just doesn't. And it was the same situation here. Question, why is there a false negative about Brian Kelly being this amazing recruiter on ESPN and Fox News? They act like LSU got a steal of the century. Notre Dame got the better deal here. Couldn't agree more. Jamie, thoughts?
Is that what people are saying on ESPN? Like, because obviously I don't know why. Well, first of all, Brian Kelly is out there doing the rounds right now, right? There's going to be, he's got an interview with Reese Davis that's going to go on College Game Day, and everybody knows. I think it's funny because we were talking about this, and all these bad stories are coming out about Brian Kelly, right,
and there'll be a bunch,
right?
And we have some too,
Yes, and I think for Notre Dame fans, who knew he could be a jerk, right? But he was their jerk, right? And now LSU fans are kind of learning that, and they're trying to defend him because he's their guy now. Yeah. And that's just the way it is. And right now it's going to be, it's a big story with him and Lincoln Riley. They're going to just sell it. Like, they're doing everything they can to get out there and sell their new program and sell all this good stuff. So they're going to talk about, and Brian Kelly, ever the politician, is going to go out and sell, the fact, and they're going to hype him up, and they're going to talk about, well, no, LSU, like, they had such turmoil and now they got the stability, and it could be true. And I think he could do really well there. I wouldn't be shocked at all if he won a national championship there based on the other guys who won the national championship.
Yeah.
But, the idea that he is this great dynamic recruiter, I mean, we just know it's not a fact. It's just not. It's not a fact. He's not a bad recruiter when he gets in front of people. It's not like, but he's not this guy who, it takes hard work to be a great recruiter, and you can't just be a closer anymore. And then I think he was kind of the guy who thought could be a closer. And that's not really how it works nowadays.
No. It kind of reminds me of a situation like LSU. It kind of reminds me, and I know there's some of my customers that have been with me 20 plus years, and they'll probably remember this. When Tyrone was hired, there was a guy who did my job at Stanford, and his name's Mike Eubanks, and he's actually at Stanford now. He got hired into the recruiting office there, and a lot of guys made fun of Mike. I knew Mike really well. He's actually a really nice guy, and I got along with him really, really well. But he was kind of one of these overzealous, Stanford's going to kick your butt type of guys. And he's just kind of a rah-rah guy. And I'm sure that's why he got the job. And he really is a very nice person. I really like the guy. But I remember when Tyrone was hired, I just say, hey, Mike, off the record, what do you think? And he's like, dude, I'm telling you, you guys are screwed. And that's what he told me. And I said, he was right. What? And he's like, I know everybody thinks that he's this guy. He said, but you're going to find out. He's like, I'm just telling you, you're going to find out. And so I remember telling a couple people this, and boy, and everybody's like, oh, it's just sour grapes, Nah, that ain't true. They're just mad they lost their coach. And, same situation's going to happen here. So I think you're right in that Kelly has a chance to win a championship there, because I think where they're at, they have an opportunity to attract people. And just even in the own state, players in their own state. If you recruit that state well, 80% of your roster's full, right? Yeah. And 80% of those guys, you can compete with the SEC just with the guys in Louisiana. And as long as you control Louisiana, you're okay. And to be honest, if I were LSU, I'm not sure I'd want some of the guys that Notre Dame had. What does Tommy Rees know about Louisiana? Never been there. What does some of these guys know anything about that kind of environment? And so they may end up being in a better situation by the coaches they hire, because they're more regional and they're kind of understand that. So Kelly could end up in a better situation than if he brought some guys, but I still don't think it's going to matter. And the reason why I don't think it matters more than anything is kind of what I said in my commentary today. And this is no disrespect. Well, I guess it sort of is. But I remember the first Brian Kelly press conference. I was there with my wife. My wife was shooting video, and I was, doing what a reporter does, asking questions, taking notes, typing stuff up, and putting updates on the board. So we get out of the press conference, and my wife and I are walking back to the car, and I look at her and I said, I don't believe him. That wasn't really impressive. It was like a whole bunch of stuff, but it didn't really seem like from the heart. And she looked at me and she said, absolutely. She's like, I didn't believe him either. And I said, that concerns me, because this is your first opportunity to tell people. You get up, you say a bunch of rah stuff, kind of like you did last night at LSU, and you're like, oh, okay, nah. Where if you listen to some other guys speak, you believe them. And to me, I think that is a difference between good coaches and great coaches or elite coaches, is they have the ability to make people buy into it. And again, no disrespect. Brian Kelly did a wonderful job here in a lot of ways, but these are just, I think, some of the things that kept him from getting over the hump at Notre Dame. He's an outstanding coach. His record proves it. His record the last 4 years proves it. But is he an elite coach? I don't think so. And I don't think that changes at LSU because he just is who he is. So enough about Kelly. Let's move on. So let's see here. All right, we got a whole lot of comments, which we always do. So bear with me until I can find a question here, folks. All right. All right. Yeah. Okay. We can't get into that one. Here's a question. Can they get the DB that decommitted back on board? He's talking about Devin Moore. I talked to Chris about this. We kind of addressed it last night. Usually guys don't bounce right away, and nobody else did. I do think Devin likes Notre Dame, and I think he likes the coaches. And he may have been premature in thinking that, they're just going to get somebody I don't like, so I just need to look at things. And let's be honest, a lot of Florida kids have a real problem coming all the way up here to Notre Dame. So that very first, meeting they're going to have is going to be huge. And boy, I sure hope that they can convince Devin Moore to come up on an official visit if this recruit was right. And I don't know why he would tell us that. I'm sure Notre Dame probably told him, and we've mentioned that they're trying to get a bunch of these guys on campus, to have that kind of family atmosphere that they've had in the past. So let's hope that happens. But I think that'll be a big part of it. Jamie, thoughts?
Yeah, and I think one of the things with Florida is obviously a big contender in staying home there, and the guy who was recruiting him, he's not it's uncertain if that guy's going to stay on the staff too. So that's the other thing, right? And then, you saw LSU was in home with him the other day. Well, Durante Jones, the defense coordinator, is that going to be Brian Kelly's defense coordinator? Like, there's a lot of uncertainty there. So I don't know. I wouldn't even be surprised if Devin Moore doesn't sign here, but then still ends up signing with Notre Dame in February. Like, I think there's a lot left to play. And people have to remember too, he took 2 visits on his own dime up during the season too. So I think I still think there's a good chance they can get him back in the fold.
Yeah, let's hope so. Next question. Will the full story of the last 30 days ever be written? Maybe.
Probably not.
Maybe.
Probably not unless
I don't
Brian
think
Kelly tells it all.
I don't think it'll be X to Z, you know what I mean? Or A to Z. What you'll hear is just the stuff that you've heard. It'll come out in bits. You know what I mean? Like, I have a pretty good idea of what happened and what kind of triggered it. I'm not going to go into it because I mentioned this the other night. I want to hear it from one other person that just to make sure that that's the story. And I've heard it from two different people, and both of them would know. And so I kind of understand. At least I think I understand what triggered this. And I actually kind of mentioned a little bit of it earlier in the podcast here, or the thing. When I'm talking about contracts, there are things that came into play that kind of triggered some of this. But I don't think it would have mattered. I think a person's they're either one out or they don't. And at the end of the day, this guy's wanted out for a long time. I mean, he's always looked at jobs.
He's always looked around.
Always looked at jobs. So, it was the only thing I can say about it. And to be honest, the only thing I think that really matters is he's gone, and now Notre Dame has a new opportunity. And I think that they have a legit chance to be way better than they were before this happened. I honestly think so, because they're keeping, in my opinion, the guys that have put this program where it needs to be, and they now have a guy who I think understands what it's going to take it to that next level. And so if we have to find out if he can coach, but everything else now seems to be in place. And when you hear about the numbers that they paid Tommy Rees, and I'm sure a lot of these guys got raises, I think Notre Dame is very serious, because they know it's right there. It's right there to take. And let's be honest, a good football team is a economic boon for the university. And I think they learned through the past 30 years that a bad football team is not a good situation, especially if you really do want to educate people. Because people think that, football is the thing that drives the university, and it does, but the national recognition and worldwide recognition that the football program brings to the university brings very powerful people who donate lots of money, who go into that endowment, who provide scholarships for more people to come to the university and be successful. And really, that's their mission. That's really what they care the most about. So, question: rumors are Polian's leaving for a head coaching job. Do you see the influx of all the great Hawaiian Polynesian players? Without him, he seemed to really find some great talent through those pipelines. What do you think?
I think it is interesting, because they are going to have someone who recruits Hawaii, and I think it's critical. Like, look at how well it's turned out in Hawaii, right? Like, with obviously Myron and Marist, and I think Kanokia's got a chance to be a stud too. So,
they like him.
Yeah, and I mean, it would be a mistake not to do it. And plus, you find a lot of guys there who are under recruited, underrated, that have a chance to be really, really good football players and develop more physically, especially. So I don't know, what direction they're going to go in terms of how, because there's probably a couple kids that they could have taken in this class that maybe wanted to come from Hawaii that they didn't take. So I don't know what the direction is going to be with Poland there. I mean, you have to say he did, that was his territory, and he did make connections there. So I hope that, they have someone, whether it's someone who's on the staff or they're going to hire, that has similar. I mean, I would love if they hired, a Polynesian coach, that could, get in there, because I think Utah is also another area where especially you could find like some stud linemen. Certainly state of Washington has more Polynesian players that you can think that are really like quality individuals too. So I think, that is something that you want to see, West Coast, Hawaii. I mean, it's important, I think.
It was interesting because I mentioned on the last podcast that I think Brian Polian did a really good job with special teams, especially the last couple of years. I think they've really come together, and he's done a good job. I don't think people understand. Nobody wants to go to Hawaii. I mean, you want to go to Hawaii on vacation. You don't want to go out there to
recruiting
recruit.
trips
That
are
is the
not
worst
same.
job out of
The
anybody.
long flight.
Oh, it's horrible. It is horrible. And I got to give Brian Polian all the credit in the world. That is not a job that any coach wants. I mean, it's one thing if you're going out there to have a good time and golf and be on the beach, but that's not what you're doing, man. You're in an airport. Yeah. You're then driven to a high school. You kiss people's butts. You get back in the car, and then you take the 12-hour flight back. It's not fun. And look, I got to take a 9-hour flight from England. That's horrible. I hate that. It's the worst flight ever. I couldn't imagine having to do that, 8 times a year. That would just be horrible. I would hate every minute of that. So, I think Poland has been a loyal soldier to Brian Kelly and has done a lot of good things. I think what's hurt him more than anything in this particular situation is he's just kind of a special teams coach. There's nothing else that he can really coach that you can't probably get a better coach from. He just doesn't have the experience coaching those other positions. And at Notre Dame, if you're trying to get over that hump, you can't have a bunch of weak links. And so I think Freeman has to decide, do I just want a special teams coach? If I do, is it Polian? And that special teams coach better be one heck of a recruiter on top of it. And, I don't know what the answer to that's going to be. So we'll just have to see. Question, V.A. Armstrong may transfer now that Bronco resigned. Should they kick the tires? Oh, that's Buckos. Hey, can you believe Buckos actually came up with that question?
I'm surprised he chimed in at all.
Surprised he even knew who Armstrong was. Yeah, we kind of talked about that. I think that
it was a good question, though, Buckos.
Yeah. I do. It's definitely something that I think that they should look into. Yeah. All right. This is a good question. Sorry if I missed it. Whom do you think will coach the O-line for Bowl? I mean, I think it's Jeff Quinn, unless Jeff Quinn gets a job. Jeff Quinn may be saying, I don't know if I'm going to be here, so I'm going to go find a job. But I think they're probably anticipating Quinn coaching it. Thoughts?
Yeah, that's the way I would be surprised if he's not coaching it. That he would have to leave early, and I think he wants to stay for at least the bowl game at the very least.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's see. Another question here. Is Del Alexander returning? Thoughts on him and his recruiting? Again, we don't know. Don't know what's going to happen with Del Alexander. He's out recruiting right now. I think a lot of people had questions and or concerns about his recruiting. He certainly landed 3 really impressive guys. I think they would have taken one more, but I don't know. I think they were kind of in a numbers crunch because there were so many good prospects on defense that, do you take a Xavier Bradshaw or do you take an Anthony Lucas? We know who you're taking. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and or Hero Canoe or Xavier and Wonka or any of those guys. So they were kind of in a numbers crunch. I think they didn't want to anger the 3 receivers they had. And I think they told them, look, unless we get somebody amazing, we're not going to really take anybody else. And that's why they really weren't recruiting anybody else. They felt like they hit on the 3 they had the year before, and they really liked these 3. I don't think that Amorian Walker, I don't think that was, his kind of looking around. I don't think that had anything to do with Dell, to be fair to Dell. I think it's a situation where Michigan just wasn't recruiting him. And all of a sudden they start recruiting him. The coach is right down there in that area, knows that area. It's just one of those situations that popped up. And, look, man, if you grew up a Notre Dame fan and Notre Dame didn't offer you, but Michigan was your best offer or the best opportunity, and then all of a sudden Notre Dame offered you, what would you do? I know what I would do. I would certainly look at Notre Dame pretty strongly.
We've seen it a lot of times with Notre Dame.
Yeah. With C.J. Williams, I think it was a situation where he's always liked SC. He's always wanted to kind of stay out there, but they just didn't really recruit him that hard until really the very end. I think Clay Helton felt like we can get better players. And they certainly offered a whole bunch of players and worked them harder than what they did him. And then all of a sudden things changed. And then, I think he's a little bit worried about what's happening at Notre Dame. So I think all that kind of. So I don't put that. I don't put that as on Dell at all. I really don't. I don't think people should. All right. Question: do you have any stories about Kelly you have been holding back and can now reveal now that he is gone? Yeah, we got a lot. I just don't know what we should. You know what I mean? Again, I just don't see the purpose. You know what I mean?
I don't see it like what you're
we're just kicking a
the
guy at this
out
point.
the door.
Yeah.
Like he's
I'd rather
out.
just celebrate
Be
Marcus
excited
Freeman
about,
and a
be
new
excited
beginning.
about what's going on with the staff now. Like I don't enjoy it. Like I saw the one story and I saw it when it came out, but it was the story of Robert Saleh and Matt LaFleur when they were GAs on his staff, and he made them. They thought they were invited to the party. They told the story, and it was like they were laughing about it because they're lowly GAs at the time, and they thought they were invited to the big party, and then it's like, no, do this, get us coffees, whatever, right?
Yeah.
And but people took it as, man, what a jerk Brian Kelly is, and it just was shared around, and I'm like, this story was like 2 years old. But they're bringing it out at this time. Like, what's the point of this?
Yeah.
What's the point of this? Okay. Like we already know, like, are you happy about Marcus Freeman? Are you happy about Tommy Rees? Are you happy about all this stuff?
Oh. Yeah. I'd just rather let's just celebrate where we're at, cause I think there'll be plenty, and trust me, there's going to be a lot of stories, just like there were when Charlie left, just like there were when Tyrone left, just like there were when Bob Davie left. There's going to be those stories. And, you're never going to make everybody happy. The only reason I bring up some of them is because for a long time, people would question us when we would say, he doesn't work hard in recruiting. And everybody's like, you're too negative. You're too negative. You're always negative. And it's like, folks, if you knew what we knew, you'd understand, right? I mean, It's crazy how many people... They'll be like, oh, well, wow, if I would have known that, I totally understand. And so there's going to be those types of moments. And when it comes to the stuff with Kelly, I just think it's time to move on. I'd just rather, let's talk about where we're at right now and what's good about what it is. So we kind of went over this last night. Christian and I don't have my list here, but they want to know if Quinn isn't retained, who would you like to see the Irish pursue an offensive line coach? And we talked about Justin Fry because you and I were huge Justin Fry fans. And, of course, I think that'd be a great hire, but then I found out I think he's also OC there at UCLA. So that's going to be really hard. It's going to be really hard to bring him. But I think he's a tremendous coach. I brought up a whole bunch of names. I just don't remember them off the top of my head. Well, you and I kind of went through it. It was, Bill Callahan. It was Bedenbaugh from Oklahoma. It was Iowa State guy. What's the other guy? Iowa State.
Tom Manning. Yeah, from Iowa State.
And then there was the guy from Iowa we mentioned. I'd written it all down last night. I put it down there. I just don't have my notes in front of me.
There's George Barnett is the Iowa old line coach this year, and he actually has a Chuck Martin connection. He worked for him at Miami, Ohio, so it's kind of a somewhat of a Notre Dame like connection. Tommy Rees connection there. Brad Davis LSU.
That was a guy.
Eric Wolford at Kentucky's done a great job this year.
Yeah. Eric
Mateo from Baylor. That's a guy that I think, did a great job at BYU and went to Baylor and has done an outstanding job there too. So, I mean, those are just, some of the names that I was kind of looking at.
All right. I know this is questions on everybody's mind. They want to know what's going on with Maureen Walker, Devin Moore, CJ Williams. Well, they're just kind of meeting them right now. And I don't think this is a situation where it's just going to be a one and done situation where they just walk in there hey, you still love us? Are you going to sign? I think this is going to take multiple, um, you know, conversations, multiple visits. And I think what will be interesting, Jamie, is if you try and get these guys here, like we know CJ Williams is supposed to be going to UCLA this weekend. If Notre Dame says, "Are you coming?" We'd like to have you come here. That will be an interesting thing. And I haven't seen it yet. What is it out there? Well, it's about three, a little, almost close to four. So my guess is they're probably having a meeting right about now, sometime around now. As an in-home. So I think it's a little too early, but it's definitely going to be addressed. And I think it'll probably take, probably by the end of the night, we'll have a hopefully a good idea of what all unfolded there. Question: how good do you feel about Kelly striking out, trying to pilfer the assistants? I feel great that the course stayed Freeman fever. Yeah, I think, and to be honest with you, I think that says a lot about Notre Dame and about their ability to, attract quality coaches and attract quality kids. And I think that says a lot about Notre Dame and their belief in Marcus Freeman as being a head coach. All right, question here. What are some recruits over the last 5 years or so that ND could have landed if Kelly put the effort into recruiting them? Well, that's hard to say. It really is, because
I think you don't know. That's why, that is a frustrating thing, because you don't know. Like, we could throw out these names, but I don't know for sure that they would have came if Kelly worked harder. All we know is that what you want is not to have the unknown, right? So, with Marcus Freeman, there is an unknown. Like, so when Kamari Rogers, the cornerback, when he says, it's nothing against, I love Marcus Freeman, whatever, just Notre Dame's not for me. There, it's nothing to do with the effort that they put in, or that they didn't like him. It's other factors. And then that's something you can live with, right? Mm-hmm. What are you going to do? You do it. But if they're like, yeah, I didn't really hear from this guy enough, like, that's frustrating, because you could say, well, maybe if they did, they would have gone, but we don't know. And that's the whole point of, I think, that we're going to see less and less of with Marcus Freeman and the staff, is that there's going to be less of that, where we don't know about this, because we're going to say, well, Notre Dame did everything. So Xavier Nwankpa, perfect example right now. They're trying to fight till the bitter end. It sounds like he was going to lean towards Iowa. Maybe it was a done deal, whatever. They're going to fight till the bitter end. And if they don't get him, you can't say they didn't do everything they could to land him.
Well, I think it's interesting, too, because a guy like Nwankpa, if Marcus Freeman was a guy recruiting him from the very beginning, and as you mentioned, he's the point man, do you get him? And they may not now, but if he was the point man, would you get him? And I would say there's a very good chance you'd land him if he were recruiting him the entire time, and he was kind of the point man, and he also knew that Marcus Freeman was going to be the head coach, and I think that's a big part of it. And I'll say this too: there are things that happen right on a visit that people don't ever hear about. I'll give you a perfect example, and I'm not going to use names. There was a guy who was a big-time defensive end, and he went to Notre Dame on an official visit, and this guy was big-time, and he went to another big-time school that Notre Dame played. He ended up going there, and I think Notre Dame had a great shot to land him, and all of a sudden they didn't have a great shot to land him, and Notre Dame was completely out, and people were wondering what happened. Well, allegedly, what happened was they were at a party, and said recruit, there was, I don't know how to say this. Let's just say he was probably being a little too forward with a female, and it was not a good situation. And, there could have been some legal things that were involved there too, if things weren't taken care of really quickly. I'm not saying that. I think that some people stepped in to make sure there was no problem. Let's just put it that way. But that gets back to the coaching staff, and they're like, well, we don't want this guy. I don't care if he's the best player in the country. And he was a damn good player. He was a damn good player for that school. He's in the league now. He's doing well, or he was doing well. I'm not so sure he's doing well right now. So that's the kind of stuff that happens. And so when you're recruiting, you think that all this stuff's going to happen, and then bam, all this crazy stuff just gets in the way, and you don't know why, and until you find out later, then you're like, okay, well, that makes perfect sense. There's a lot of those types of things that happen in recruiting. There's just a lot of them. We know right now, Jamie and I, about a guy that probably should be at Notre Dame. Still, who knows what'll happen, but there's just a thing there that there's nothing Notre Dame can do about it. So it's either going to happen or it's not, and we don't know. And no matter how hard Notre Dame recruits or whatever the case may be, it's something completely and totally out of their control. All right. Let's see. Here we go. Hypothetically, ND wins the national championship. Does Brian Kelly use on the recruiting trail saying it was him that got them there and use it to negatively recruit against Notre Dame? Well, I think he'd be foolish. And if Marcus Freeman goes in, takes over the coaching staff, and goes into the playoff and wins a national championship, ain't nobody going to believe that that's Brian Kelly who won that.
No one's giving that credit to Brian
No
Kelly.
way. No way.
Will.
Yeah. Next question. Any chance Chris Watt comes back to coach O-line? I don't see it. We've kind of dug into that a little bit too. I don't see it. I think a lot of people are very, very high on Chris Watt as a guy that's going to be a very good coach. I just think it's a little bit too early for him to take on this kind of role. Anything you want to add?
No, just I think you said it all there.
All right. It looks like Quinn and Alexander won't be back. Any ideas on O-line and wide receiver coach? I don't know, Jamie. What do you think?
Well, I mean, we can say that we don't know that they won't be back for sure, so we don't want to just do that. But, I mean, we just talked about a lot of the O-line guys. I mean, certainly, would be a big ask, but Brian Hartline was a teammate of Marcus Freeman's and at Ohio State. Obviously, he's at Ohio State doing a great job right now. Wouldn't hurt to ask him. He's a pretty darn good recruiter and a pretty darn good coach. So,
yeah.
I mean, I think I would think he would be absolutely the top of the list if that wide receiver coach is open. That's the guy that they would absolutely try to get.
I think it'd be tough without an OC designation or some type of.
They would have to give him some kind of passing game court.
Some sort of title.
A lot of it would be about money and
yeah,
all that. And Ohio State will pay up to
whatever they need. Yeah. So, but look, man, the way I look at it, and it's kind of like we talked about with Reese last night, and why Reese would choose to go with Freeman. If you're a young coach, right, and you're trying to build your, resume and you're trying to build your future, the best thing you can do is attach yourself to a good young head coach. Because that guy can take you everywhere you need to go. And if you do a good job for him, he's going to keep climbing that ladder. Or if he's at Notre Dame and you're doing a good job, you've got job security for a very long time. If you go with Brian Kelly, you know that he just left you, abandoned you, ran for the money. And how long is he really going to be there? I will be shocked if Brian Kelly coaches 4 years down there. I'll be shocked. I really will. I think he went down there for the money just to see if he could make a splash. And if things go well, I think he'll coach longer. But if they don't go well, I think he'll be gone within 3 years. I just do. I just don't think he loves it. I don't think he loves it. I just don't.
I think he's going there to try to win a national championship, and then I think he'll probably lose a lot of interest after that. If that happens. So
if it
if it doesn't happen.
But I think if it doesn't happen in a quick enough time, I think he'll lose interest as well. So, Man, he's got to have $150 million when this is all over with. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's hard to be motivated when you got $150 million in the bank and
He's
you
gonna
can
own a
travel
lot
and
of
go
houses.
anywhere you want in the rest of the world.
Yeah.
I wouldn't know that, but I've never had that opportunity, but and nor will I ever. Mike and Jamie, everyone speaks to whether ND got it right with Freeman's hire, which I think is more emotional than intellectual. The correct question is, did ND get the Brian Kelly hire right? I'm not sure I follow that. I mean, I do think that Kelly was the right guy to hire at the time. I just don't think that they had any other better options. Do you?
Yeah. And I mean, I think if you grade hires after it's all over, I mean, you can say he didn't win a national championship, and that always is. I wrote about this in 6 Odds. Like it's part of his legacy. He didn't win a national championship. Never really came close, even though they were in the national championship game and then they made the playoff twice. They weren't close. They weren't close to a national championship team any of those years. And it was proven in those games. But what he did do, it took way too long to get there, probably. But 5 straight years, 10-win season, like he put Notre Dame in a great position now for the next guy, who is Marcus Freeman. So, I mean, he did a good job. Did he do the best job? Was he, he's not getting a statue, but he did a good job. So you would ultimately, give him, like a good grade for what he did.
Yeah. God, there's so many good questions. I mean, I know I can't keep you forever, but there's just a lot of really good questions here, Jamie. I want to get to a couple of them. This is a good one. Do you think that Jack Swarbrick saw the juice in Marcus Freeman that he brought to the program, and that's why he wasn't proactive to keep Kelly when he sensed Kelly was restless? Thoughts?
Well, I think Kelly just told him he was leaving. I don't think he gave him a chance to say, hey, can you match this? I think that was just the part of it. So I think that I'm sure he noticed what Marcus Freeman was doing, just like how he noticed and how he recruited and how the players responded, just like how he noticed Clark Lee responded, which is why people would ask him about Clark Lee and possibly being the next coach, because he knows that's how the players responded to him. And really, like, you can say that, that's not the ultimate deciding factor, but it is definitely a factor when there's so many players that can do, come out for you. And so many recruits come out for you. Cause that's the kind of thing you can ask them to do that. And you wrote about it, today, Mike, right? You can ask them to do that and, that's fine, but they gotta end up do it, and they gotta mean it. And I think enough of them meant it. So, yeah.
I absolutely. I mean, it was remarkable to see how much of that is. And there's no doubt there's a tremendous amount of juice that he brings. The other thing I want to bring up about this is, if you've ever employed people or you've ever been around people that, I've obviously employed not a lot, but a number of people. And, I've managed people before I own this business. And there are just certain people that just aren't happy where they're at, right? And they keep looking for things that are going to make them happy, whether it be more money or you give me this and I'll be happy, and you give me this and I'll be happy, and give me this. But they just keep coming back, and they keep wanting more because they want to be happy. But in reality, they're just not happy with the situation. And I think that had as much to do with this as anything. I just don't think Brian Kelly ever really liked the job. I don't think he ever embraced Notre Dame. And he was always looking for another opportunity. I think that there was a situation where there was an opportunity that came both with LSU and then also with his contract as well. And so I think that a lot of that kind of stuff really factored into this. But at the end of the day, he was never really happy here. And there's nothing more miserable than working with somebody who's miserable and not always happy. Or, it's just, you want people to be excited about where you're working. And, if you've ever been in an environment where there's one or two people who are always kind of dragging down the thing, and I'm not saying that Kelly was always that way. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is some people are just not happy, and that really affects things. And after a while, if you're dealing with that person as a superior, it can get really tiring. It just really can. All right, here we go. We'll take 2 more questions. Jamie's he's got a lot going on here. So we'll take 2 more questions and we'll call it good. Question: Keenan Bailey has a role on the ND staff in this regime. If people don't know who Keenan Bailey is, he's a Notre Dame grad. Kind of started his career at Notre Dame as a kind of recruiting guy, and then was hired away at Ohio State. He works for Heartline. He's one of the offensive quality control guys, known as a really good recruiter and somebody who's heavily involved in that. Could he have a role on this staff? Could. I don't know. But he's certainly a name that has a connection to Notre Dame. So I understand why you'd ask that question. So I just wanted to kind of let everybody know who he was and what his connection was. What do you think, Jamie? Anything you want to add?
No, that would be a guy that, especially if you're going to bring Heartline, that's a guy that Heartline, I'm sure, would recommend to bring, right? So, anytime you can get a guy with a Notre Dame connection that is, doing something at a very, very high level, I think that's always a guy you want to be interested in bringing back to Notre Dame.
Yeah. All right, we're going to end it with this question. And once again, before we end, I wanted to mention, if you're not a member of Irish Sports Daily, go to the front page, click on the premium section. You can sign up for $1 for a week. You can sign up for $10 for a month, $100 for a year. I think you'll love it. It's more. I think what we have probably better than anything is our community. Our fans are, the Notre Dame fans that are part of our community. It's a great community. There's not a lot of bickering and arguing, and we really try and keep that to a very big minimum. So I think that the most fun you're going to have, obviously the news and updates and stuff like that are exciting, but the community, I think, is what a lot of people really enjoy. So if you're not a member, I encourage you to at least give us a chance and sign up and see what you think. We're going to end with this question right here, and I'm going to let you answer it, Yama. What is the most important thing to do going forward for Marcus Freeman?
I think it's getting the staff right, the rest of the staff, and because obviously what they've done is hopefully build this foundation, but we assume that there's going to be probably at least 3, maybe 4 new positions that they're going to have to do, and not just the on-field staff, but also like the recruiting staff that we mentioned. I think that starts with everything. So you could say recruiting, they're going to, get more elite talent, get that talent that makes you compete with Alabama and Georgia. Yeah. 100%, that goes without saying, but you don't get there if you don't get the staff right. Cause it can't just be, Marcus Freeman. So, it can't just be the guys that they already have. You have to get the staff right. You have to be able to put yourself in a position to land these guys, continue to have guys that can coach well and develop and do all these things. Cause that's the main reason why Notre Dame, they've recruited well enough, but they identified talent. They developed talent. When they got here, there's a lot of guys that didn't seem like they were going to be, maybe on paper didn't look like they were going to be multi-year starters, end up being multi-year. Didn't look like they're going to be NFL guys, be NFL guys, right? You have to be able to do that and continue that. And if you go up a level in recruiting as well, there you go. That's how you win a national championship.
I agree. I think a lot of it's already done. And I think that's the wise part of it, is that Jack Swarbrick and Marcus Freeman realized, you're going to be hard pressed to find better coaches than you have right now. Look, we're having a lot of success. Why upset when you have some quality coaches? And I think they have. Look, everybody knows me. I'm a straight shooter. If I don't think that this guy's good, I'll tell you that. I'll say, look, and I think right now the guys that we know are supposed to be coming back, if I were Marcus Freeman, I'd want all those guys back too. I really would. And I'm not lying by saying that. I really would want those guys back. I think that they're good quality coaches. Could you find a better coach? Yeah, probably, but could you get them to come? Everybody wants a good coach. They're going to pay them just like you're going to pay them. So when you have good quality coaches, which they do, and the roster reacts positively to them, which they do, there's no point in going to try and get a whole bunch of brand new coaches that you don't know whether they're going to mesh and whether they can coach the actual talent that you have. So they were smart in doing that. And I think finishing this out, O-line coach is huge. Got to get an elite O-line coach. If you get that and then fill out the rest of the staff, you're good. And I think a big part of it, more than anything too, is you got to get the mentality right in the administrative part of things. And I'm not sure it was always right. I think that there are some fantastic people in that administrative staff that work extremely hard, and I would absolutely keep them. I just think the message and what you're trying to accomplish and the standard and holding everybody to a standard, that needs to change. You fix that and get the right everything together in going in motion, and I think you're going to fix a lot of these problems. So I lied. I have one more question. I'm going to answer it.
Here we go.
I know. Question: how good a guitarist is Jerry Garcia? Jamie, do you even know who Jerry Garcia is?
Yeah, the Grateful Dead. Come on.
All right.
Come on.
I got to answer it because it's a guitar question. I have to answer the guitar question.
That's why
Let me answer
it. I thought it was just all you.
Jerry Garcia is a fantastic guitar player. One of my favorite guitar players. Love the way he plays. Big Jerry fan. All right, folks, that's going to be it. We'll be back here maybe tomorrow. We got to see what's going on with everything. If there's a press conference, I'm sure I don't know whether it'll be the Yama. He's pretty busy. We may have to get Christian. Matt won't talk to us. He won't get on here. I don't know. I just don't. I don't know. Matt just runs to his own tune, and apparently he's in charge, and nobody else. Whatever Matt does is what Matt does, and then we do whatever we do. So I'm kidding, folks. I love Matt. Everybody loves Matt. We love Matt. All right, folks, that's going to be it. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope to see you on Irish Sports Daily. Ask questions there if you have some that you didn't have, and the staff will get to it, or that we didn't get to here. Ask it there. We'll answer it. Thanks again for watching, and we'll hopefully talk to you tomorrow.